Welcome to the HR Champions podcast with me, Phil Scott of HR Recruit, where I bring you leaders from the HR community. In our podcast, we'll be discussing their careers to date, their passion for HR, and the challenges they faced along the way. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Gemma Melhuish, Director of Human Resources at Rainbow Children's Trust, Charity Trust, and they have been ranked in the top 100 Sunday Times best companies to work for the last 9 years running, which is an extremely impressive feat. Gemma, I'm just going to pass over to you. Please give the listeners a brief overview and introduction to who you are.
Thanks, Phil. Hi, I'm Gemma. I am the Director of HR at Rainbow Trust Children's Charity. I'm also a mum of 2 boys, so I've got a bit of a juggling act to do. So I've got 2 little ones, a 5 and an 8-year-old. I absolutely love working, but I also love sport, love going on holiday. More importantly, I love the sunshine. So I'm a bit of a jack of all trades in terms of work. So I work to live and I live to work. I work at Rainbow Trust Children's Charity. I have been there for the last 4.5 years as the Director of HR. And what we do at Rainbow Trust is support families who have a child with a life-threatening or terminal illness. And we basically make the most out of their time together. So the family support workers provide expert, practical, emotional and practical support for as long as they need it. So we basically tailor the support to the families. Rainbow Trust is a national charity, 4.3 million charity. As Phil said earlier, we've undergone a number of difficulties, as many organisations have gone through in the last year. And my role is to steer the ship of the people, I suppose, to make sure that the amazing staff are well supported, making sure that we develop them, making sure that we're listening to them and leading the strategy for the people.
So we'll start at the beginning. How did you first get into HR?
Well, I kind of fell into HR, and I think probably quite a few HR professionals get into HR that way. So I did my undergraduate sports degree at Sheffield Hallam University, because pretty much at school, all I could do was sport. So I thought, what do? I'll go into university to do a sports degree. And when I was there, I enjoyed the management side and the business side. And I kind of fell out of sport because I got into the lifestyle of university. And after uni, I went traveling. And while I was traveling, I was coming up to the end of my 18 months, because actually I went away for 18 months. I did the more than the year. And my mum said, you need to think about what you're going to do when you get home. Why don't you apply for the NHS graduate training scheme? And I was like, oh, what's that? I don't know anything about it. So I Googled it in a Thailand internet cafe and applied for it. And here I am today. It was a great opportunity. I got on the scheme. I remember doing a maths test sitting in an internet cafe. No, not very good at numbers, better with people. And after numerous assessment centres and tests and everything else, when I got home, I was really, really fortunate to have been got on the graduate training scheme. So that's how I got into HR. And then from HR, I went into the NHS. So the NHS was where I pretty much developed my career in HR. I was in the NHS since 2008 and then joined a Rainbow Trust in 2016. So quite a long time working my way up the ladder, I suppose, in the NHS and now latterly in the charity sector. So that's how I got into HR.
And what is it you like about working in HR?
The variety, the challenge, working with people. You never know what you're going to get from one day to the next. Specifically, I enjoy the development side. So I enjoy finding the problem and actually working with the people to get to a positive outcome, if that makes sense. So I think often with HR, you get the negatives, but actually I like the positive side. I like the engagement, the culture, development, and actually the developing of the organisation, the people. That's the bits I enjoy.
I mean, your career's taken, steady progression. What's been the secret to that progression? I'm guessing you don't just sort of sit there and people give you promotional opportunities if you're plodding away. What is it that you think has sort of stood you in good stead?
I think there's not really any secret. It's just down to hard work. I think hard work, loving what you do. I really, really enjoy HR. I love work and I'm highly competitive. So I think if you actually know where you want to go and are willing to put the hours in and work hard at it and just keep just being resilient and keep going, eventually you get to where you need to be. But also I think being, it's going to sound a bit bad, I was going to say being good at what you do, but actually I mean like building the credibility through the organisation that you're working in. And then obviously there's an element of word of mouth, and there's an element of actually, if you do what you say you're going to do, then you've got things to work off going forward, so you can develop your career that way.
Has there been any standout achievements that you can think about?
There's two quite different. So actually being given the opportunity to be on the NHS graduate scheme was actually one of the biggest achievements of my career. It's highly competitive, and I couldn't believe I got the place. And without getting that place, I would not be where I am today. And then the other one is actually getting the current job that I've got now. So when I applied for the Director of HR at Rainbow Trust, I was in the NHS, but I'd already also just had maternity leave. So my confidence wasn't quite where it is when you've had a break from work and you come back, you're not really in the nitty gritty of it. So when I was offered that job and this job that I've got now, I was over the moon. So I think those are probably the two achievements I can think of. What's
your sort of view with HR? Do you sort of stick to the core responsibilities, or do you try and sort of get out into the operations on a wider scale?
I'll definitely get out. I couldn't stick to the nitty gritty of the job responsibilities. Obviously, you've got to stick to basics to an element, but in my role now, I want to strive for more. You need to understand what's going on operationally to be able to actually influence any change, any direction. So now I'm fully part of the wider operational discussions, part of senior leadership team, and I've got a great team that is able to stick to the job responsibilities, and I can then go off and look at the wider aspects.
So I'm going to ask you about the Sunday Times ranking. 9 years running is extremely impressive. And also I think you've got a 2-star accreditation. So for those that don't know what a 2-star accreditation is, just tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so the Sunday Times and Best Companies is basically an engagement survey, and the accreditation is a Best Companies accreditation. So they provide accreditation levels for outstanding levels of engagement, your engagement levels. So you can be engaged, or you can be outstanding, have an outstanding level of engagement, or you can exceed level engagement. So there's 3 stars. A 2-star accreditation is outstanding levels of engagement. So we are absolutely thrilled to have been awarded that. And actually we have been informed that we've been awarded it again this year. So it's 2 years on the trot, which is fabulous, especially considering the difficult year we've just had. So we're quite surprised, but also over the moon that we've been awarded that again. The Sunday Times top 100 not-for-profit organisations to work for is the list that is put in the Sunday Times. They do all sorts of different surveys, and it's basically a survey that goes out to all your staff, and it's their views. So you can't influence it. There is a huge organisational questionnaire that you have to complete as well, but the results come from the staff. So we've been doing that ever since I've worked there, and as you say, 9 years. It's the 10th year this year. So fingers crossed we're on the list, but we don't know yet. It hasn't been publicised yet, so we don't know. So yeah, and the last couple of years, we've even improved position to the top 50. So the last 2 years, we've been top 50 in the not-for-profit organisations to work for, which is just amazing. We're really proud of it as an organisation.
And that's mainly on the sort of staff engagement, I think, isn't it?
It's all staff engagement, yeah. So they look at a number of factors. They look at well-being, fair deal, leadership, management, personal growth, team. There's 8 factors. I can't quite remember all the factors now, but there's 8 different factors they look at, but ultimately it's about levels of engagement. So to have a 2-star accreditation for outstanding levels of engagement is amazing, and to be on the list is fantastic. So we just hope that we're on it again, and our response rate for that engagement levels are always really, really high. So last year, or this year that we've just done, it was 93%, and that's purely because we do what we say we're going to do. So when we've got the results, we report on the results. We have a focus our results, and those results inform our people strategy. So it isn't, I think some organisations, you do it and then actually what are you going to do with the information? We really use that. So yeah, 93%, which is great. I always try and beat the last year's response rate. The year before 92, and this year's 93. So next year I'll be aiming for 100%.
How have you engaged staff differently then in lockdown?
Yeah, we have. I mean, Rainbow Trust is a dispersed organisation anyway. So we have care teams across the country in the Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, Essex, Southampton, and London and Southeast. So we've got 6 different care teams already. So the way that we always engage with staff is different to an office-based organisation. So we have to communicate with people in different environments. But during lockdown, it actually meant that communication was ramped up hugely. But in the way that we communicate, because we always have to communicate in a way that meets all the care teams who are working remotely, that actually all of us in a remote organisation was in the same sort of style. So we had to do remote communication. But what I mean by ramped up is that a huge amount more engagement was done. So we do senior leadership team monthly briefings. We continued with those, but what we then did is also had all employee Zoom calls once a month. And that was about sharing information, but it was also more check-ins. We did some games on it. It was just making sure that people were okay generally. Our chief exec started coffee mornings, really informal coffee mornings, Zoom coffee mornings, just drop in or don't. And it's a case of asking any questions you've got or just saying hello. We in HR did a similar thing where we did HR drop-in sessions. We're still doing all of these things now. And we do regular communication. So as soon as there was a government announcement, we would try and communicate something on the back of it, even if it was, there's nothing further to add, and just keeping the engagement up. And that's the communication side. But I also, a couple of years ago, set up a wellbeing group, and we call it Feel Good. And that's representative across the whole organisation. So it's not just HR led, because that would be no use, because that would be just me feeding in my ideas. But everyone as part of the organisation, it's voluntary. So it's people that have got a passion for it. And we create material on a monthly basis, different themes of feel good, of well-being. And what we did over the lockdown period was actually, we did the same information, but we recreated it to make sure it was really relevant for those people that are potentially really struggling with isolation, struggling with changes of roles, struggling with just generally being locked in with or without family, it's depending on your circumstances. And we focus it for 4 different areas. So it's body, mind, team, and work, the 4 themes. And we always have a challenge, a feel-good event, and some information, and a feel-good Friday. So it's fun, and it hopefully brings people together. But it also aims to really provide useful well-being information. So we provided top 10 tips on working in a remote environment, working in a different environment, mental health awareness. So we did a huge amount of work on the well-being and communication, which helps obviously then with engagement, knowing that you cared about and listened to. And also when we're coming out of the first lockdown, when we were able to go back into the offices and start to do more face-to-face before we were locked in again, we did another survey, but it was actually about the health and safety aspects. How are you actually feeling about maybe going into family homes or going back into the office? Because you haven't been allowed to do it, and people are anxious actually about it. And what can we do to help alleviate that? And we did all the health and safety one-way systems in, but I introduced some further questions specifically about well-being, not just about the logistics, but actually how are you feeling? And anybody that answered anything remotely concerning regarding their anxiety levels, we individually followed up. So people are really listened to, heard, and adapt. Things are adapted for them if necessary. And that's really what we've done to adapt, our engagement levels, our communication, and things like that.
How has COVID affected the organisation over the last 12 months?
Hugely. So in the last 12 months, obviously, with what we do is family support. Our family support workers weren't able to go into families' homes. Just it wasn't allowed. So overnight they've had to adapt the way that they support the families and the children. Family support workers go in a role thinking they're going out to face-to-face support. That's why they become family support workers. They become that that person that becomes a support to that family. And overnight, they having to now sit behind a computer screen. It's not what they go into the role for, but they were amazing in how they adapted to things and what they did in terms of the last 12 months of becoming the virtual support to children, creating activity packs. They even went and changed the support and were delivering breast milk to neonatal support workers, collecting prescriptions, you name it, they did it. If the family needed it, they did it. If it was, within the restrictions. Over the last 12 months, obviously income dropped. Huge issue with the charity. We couldn't do events. We couldn't do any sort of face-to-face fundraising, which is a majority of our income. So our fundraising teams had to also adapt. We went, had emergency appeals. The fundraising teams went virtual. So we did a 280,000 steps challenge, did a virtual auction. So they did an amazing job, everyone, just to adapt in those 12 months, and are still adapting. We're not out of it, we're still in it. I mean, you get the glimpse where they can go back and do a bit more, and then we get pulled back again. But in that first lockdown, we've learned a lot, so we're now in a position where we can adapt to the support and adapt the services that we provide quite easily.
And have you had to restructure the organisation at all?
Yeah, unfortunately, we did. So as I said, because our income is pretty much led by fundraising, have to have a restructure. It wasn't what we wanted to do. It led to a 17% reduction, actually, so it's quite significant restructure. In one weekend alone, we lost about £500,000, and we just needed to make sure that the organisation was sustainable. So it's really an emotional and difficult time for everybody. We lost some really good colleagues, really sad time, impacted on morale, impacted on the organisation that we are. But it had to be done, and the way that we did it was in the way that we always do things at Rainbow Trust, in an honest and open, transparent way. I will say it's probably one of the hardest restructures I've ever done, and I've done a lot, huge scale restructures. This wasn't such a huge scale restructure, but emotionally it was probably one of the most difficult ones because of the situation, I suppose, and because of the control aspect. We didn't choose, it wasn't something that we would have chosen to do. It was something that, because of the environment that we're in, we had to do. And it was the first one I've ever had to do virtually. So having to have these really difficult conversations with people, potentially people may be losing their roles over Zoom. You don't get the element of personal, the human nature aspect of it. It's really difficult. But we did, but we're out of the other end. We look forward to the future, and hopefully a really positive future. So
how's it affected morale then?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously has impacted morale. We as I say, that we did that in August. Sorry, we started it March, August. So we've had a few months since, but as I said, people lost friends, people lost colleagues throughout it. So morale was impacted, and at the same time, alongside that, people were in a lockdown situation. So already emotions were running high, and people were doing jobs that they weren't really employed to do. Jobs changed quite quickly overnight. But what we try and do is really focus on why we're here. We try and remind staff, yes, it's difficult, but why are we working for Rainbow Trust? And that's for the families that we support. That's great on paper, but when you're going through it in reality, the impact is that this is affecting those people as human beings and their family and their livelihoods potentially. And what we have to do is try and help support, improve that morale. And actually, we are in a much better place now, but that's what happens with time and change management. You go through the curve. And actually, since we've gone through the restructure, that's when we've done the new Sunday Times survey. And since then, we've got a 2-star accreditation. So actually, the results are showing that we've still got outstanding levels of engagement, which is amazing.
So I'm going to bring it onto you a little bit. So one of the questions I like to ask, give me 3 people who've been most influential to you.
I'm going to go quite cliched at the beginning, a bit girly, but I'm going to say my mum. So my mum has always taught me to believe in myself. As I said right at the beginning, I was into sport,
What was your sport?
Netball. So I played, well, actually, to be honest, I did athletics as well. I did whatever sport I did, I was one of those children that could just do it. I was quite one of those, well, she's good at all sports kind of person. But I played netball at quite a high level. I played for Yorkshire, like West Yorkshire. But when it came to academic side, didn't come quite as easily. I had to really work hard. And my mum always said, just believe in yourself, you'll get there, believe in yourself. And she always said, if you want something enough, and if it's the right thing for you, you will get it if you've tried hard enough. And that's how we were brought up. And it really stood me in the way that I do things now. If something doesn't quite go my way, I think, well, did I really want it? And did I try as hard as I could have? And I think generally, if you think, well, maybe I didn't put enough work in, the answer is, well, you didn't deserve it then. So my mum is probably the first person. The second one is a previous manager of mine, really tough manager. But she was really influential to me because she was always the kind of manager that made you kind of have butterflies in your stomach if something had gone wrong. And not in a negative way, but in a way where you just wanted to do a good job for them. And she always reminded me to go back to basics. So don't overcomplicate things. Why are we doing it? What's the purpose? And again, she was quite influential to me. So I still do that now in my career. And if anyone's asking me any questions, I always say, go back to basics, start at the beginning. And that's from her. And then my last one, I'm going to go back to family and say my husband and my 2 boys, they come as a package. Can't differentiate. Mm. And that's pretty much because they keep me grounded. They keep me. They remind me of the importance of being balanced and have some fun. With a highly pressured role, which, I am in, you can sometimes forget when you get home that it's like, I'm quite bossy. And they're like, you're not at work now, Mom. And it's like, sorry. So those 3, I think those 3 people, so family and a previous manager.
Who do you currently learn from then? What personal development do you do?
So my current manager and my current team, I'm learning from all the time. And what I mean by team is I've got 2 teams. So I've got the senior leadership team, who is like my peers, and then I've got my HR team, and I'm learning from all of them in different ways. So my current manager is just beyond clever, one of these people that's just really clever. So I'm learning, great business head, learning the business side of things from her. And the senior leadership are just really good at what they do. They're like inspiring. And then my team, I learn from looking at things from a different perspective. So I bounce ideas off them all the time. So we're small, I've only got a small team, we're a relatively small organization. So we have to kind of support each other and learn from each other. But I'm also part of an external network of HR directors, which are really, really important, because it gives you that external perspective of what's going on outside of your little bubble. And we support each other, I'd say. So we offer a lot of I get a lot of external support from them as well.
Have you experienced any setbacks? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I don't know whether you've got this from me yet, but I'm quite a control freak and a little bit of a planner. So I suppose one of my setbacks was when I first became head of HR in one of the NHS trusts that I worked in. And I had a plan. I was one of these people where I went in and I had a 5-year plan that I wanted to be an HR director in 5 years. I had to be and it's one of these things where it's like, and at the same time, I was at the age where I just got married. I wanted children. So they were conflicting in terms of timescales. And I remember that, I became pregnant. I was very happy. It was all planned, blah, blah, blah. And I remember saying to my manager, crying, I'm pregnant and now it's ruined my 5-year plan. And she was just like, what are you talking about? That's great news. But when I say it's a setback, it was a setback mentally.
Did it become a 6-year plan then at that point?
Well, it became a 10-year plan. I had 2 kids in between. But the first one, it was just like, but how can I get where I need to get to when I'm not going to be at work? She was like, but this is a new direction. You'll become, you'll be redirecting yourself. And she was brilliant. And that's actually the same manager that I was referring to previously. She was a really good manager. But that was kind of one of my setbacks. It took me actually, I now can laugh about it, but it really did affect me because I was like, I can't, because how am I going to be able to do both? And she was like, look at the world that we are in. People do both. And now I'm in a position where, I can be it, and I'm an HR director, and it's just happened a little bit later because I was fortunate to have 2 kids, so it's just, so that was one of them.
Have you made any mistakes? And if so, have you got any advice to others so they don't make the same mistake?
Well, actually, that is probably one of my biggest mistakes, to be fair, getting so hung up about a plan that actually it was a ridiculous plan. But it wasn't ridiculous in the way where I think it's good to have a focus and a direction, but just to be so rigid, to have more flexibility and to know that actually you can become a better HR professional with a wider level of knowledge and skills and experiences to just going down one route. So actually, I would say that is something that I have learned from.
Yeah, I understand that one. It's good to have the plan, but the time frame can give you clarity, but it can also put pressure that doesn't need to be there.
Exactly, that's the additional pressure that you put on yourself that no one else is putting pressure on but you, and then you just end up not doing anything particularly very good because you're thinking about the timescales to get there. It's like, just enjoy it. And now I just enjoy what I do without thinking about what's the next big step, what's the next big move. Just enjoy it for now.
Give me one common myth about HR that you'd like to debunk.
Oh, one common myth: that we're not an admin function. That actually we can support with the organisational direction. And actually, in all fairness, COVID has massively helped that, I would say, because now we are the go-to people to support with huge change and the need to actually move very quickly and being adaptable and versatile. We come into our own, really, in HR.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, everyone I speak to in HR said they've never worked as hard and as long hours, because you've had your normal day job and then all the sort of COVID stuff that got dumped in,
Well, it's becoming experts in everything, isn't it? Very quickly. You've got a word furlough, never even heard of over a year ago, and now we're all HR experts in furlough, how to manage it, how to not manage it.
Yeah, and how to create a safe environment and all sorts of handbooks to do this, that, and the other. It's it's been tough for a lot of people. Would you have any advice for anyone who's in HR, maybe early on in the career, that's aspiring to get to where you are? What advice would you give to someone?
A couple of bits of advice. Stick up for what you believe in. Don't lose your moral compass. And work hard. And I'll go back to basics. I mean,
that sort of brings us up to time there. If anyone wants to reach out to you, can they? And if so, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way. Or I've got an email address I'm happy to share if you want me to do it here, or I don't know how you want me to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can put it in the podcast.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm happy for anyone to contact me if they've got any questions or needs any support. So that's fine.
Fantastic. So massive thank you to Gemma for helping us with the podcast. I hope the listeners have enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you very much.